Welcome to Charts Today. My name is David Linton, and today's edition for Thursday, the 19th of September, comes to you from London. And the big news is, of course, that the Federal Reserve dropped interest rates by 0.25% last night. The market had largely priced that in, so the dollar is actually staying in bullish mode, even though we've had an interest rate cut, which is unusual, but that's basically the market has priced that in, and the dollar remains strong. Eurodollar is fairly flat on that news, no real volatility there. Again, much as expected, and we still have more downside targets than upside ones on the Eurodollar, so it's all about dollar strength, euro weakness. Japanese yen, we see the dollar actually holding on to its bullishness here as well. It bounced off support on the cloud. Remembering this is the short term, the medium term, and the long term chart. So at the moment, the dollar is looking strong there. Sterling is up very slightly against the dollar and holding its short term bullish position, but of course, medium and long term is still bearish. And if we look at against the euro, we're holding our bullish position there as well, and a Swiss franc also. So sterling is actually still short-term bullish against most currencies. Looking at Bitcoin, we have fallen below the $10,000 mark overnight. We're now at 9,860. So we've seen a real move lower there. And also we're seeing the medium-term chart lower as well, so quite significant that it's breaking back down again. So that's short and medium-term bearish. The U.S. stock market was fairly flat. Of course, stock markets like lower interest rates, means the return on equities is relatively higher, and we still haven't managed to break to a new high on the S&P, but we are still bullish on all three time frames. The NASDAQ also up slightly, and the Dow Jones index also just trying to meet this resistance level. The Russell 2000 index fell away a little bit yesterday, but is still managing to hold short-term bullish. The futures are down this morning. We see the S&P future down 0.2%, and the Nasdaq E-mini down just over 0.25%. So it does suggest that the US market will open slightly lower today. Looking at the FTSE 100, we're up slightly in the UK, and the Midcaps up by a similar amount, just holding on to their bullish trend as well. The DAX is up 0.28%. So bullish on all three time frames, not quite on the long-term chart, but starting to look like it will be. And the CAC Quarante actually up by 0.4%, the market that's outperforming, nudging new highs again here, multi-year highs on the DAX, on the CAC Quarante, so that's looking quite strong. Japan was up 0.5% overnight. It continues to look bullish on the medium and short-term charts. And Hong Kong was actually down 1%. It's just deteriorating further here. So bearish on the medium and long-term charts, and that short-term chart just holding on to its bullishness. But Hong Kong is actually a weaker-looking market. India, much the same. We're seeing here on the Sensex, we're up slightly overnight, but the market's not looking great. Down 1% on the Sensex, so it really is just sinking to new lows there. So India is the one, has been the standout market for a long time, is actually now looking quite a lot weaker. And if we look at the Aussie market, it was up 0.5% overnight. It's holding on to its bullish trends all around. Brent crude is up 0.5% this morning to $63, but really we've struggled to get through that medium-term trend. So even though we saw that spike in crude oil prices, the fact that we've pulled right the way back into bearish territory on the medium-term chart says to us that this is really just a spike. If we, of course, go higher, that will activate that upside thrust, but for the moment we're seeing a pullback and we're bearish on the short term as well. WTI, of course, the picture is quite similar, not quite as bearish as Brent crude on the short term chart, but nonetheless we are still in bearish territory there. US NatGas sitting at $2.62. It has broken out. It's just coming back to test support on that short term cloud. Gold still struggling to get above $1,500, so we're still in short-term bearish territory there, although the medium and long-term charts look amazing. Silver, much the same picture. US 10-year yields, of course, we saw a little bit of a sell-off overnight on that interest rate cut, so we are just back into bearish territory on the yields there, now back into the 177% area, having been as high as 190 in the last few days, but it looks like that short-term run in yields is coming to an end. and German bond prices just starting to recover slightly off the back of that as well. This data all coming to you from Thomson Reuters Icon, or if you're a private user, Metastock Zenith. Taking a look now at the individual stocks, and for this I'm using Yahoo Finance, a good free source of data running into Updata. The best performer last night, the Dow Jones Index, was JP Morgan Chase. They're up 1%. That chart looking really quite good, breaking to new highs. And then on the downside, we had Dow Chemical. They were down 0.5%, so not looking so good there. On the NASDAQ 100, we had overnight the best performer was KLA Corporation. Applied Materials was next. KLA were up 3.5%. That chart really storming ahead, outperforming the Dow Jones by 50% this year. So this is a really strong performer there, and no surprise that the best performers often are continued to being the best performers. Elixon Pharmaceuticals were down 4.5%, and that chart not looking great at all. Netflix were one of the worst performers as well, down 2.5%, and looking like a long-term move to bearish there on Netflix. So again, not looking great. Looking at the Aussie market now, the best performer in the Aussie market was Brickworks Limited, up 6.4%. Chart looking pretty good. Very clear recovery here, so looking pretty good on that front. On the downside, we had Seven West Media down 4%, and the chart continues to be a bearish looking chart, underperforming the market by some 25% this year so far. In India, sea of red, we saw the Indian market was down quite significantly. Tata Motors, they were actually up 2%, but the chart still looks pretty grim. And if we look at the downside, we had Yes Bank yet again in the laggards, down 11%. The chart really testing the floor here, underperforming the market, the Dow Jones, by a massive 75% this year. So really not a great looking chart at all. Looking at the FTSE 100 now, the best performer was IAG. They were up 2.4%. News that the strike next week will be called off has helped lift the stock there for British Airways strike. We had Lloyds Bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, looking like banks are all featuring in the provincial leaders board this morning. On the downside, we've got Next. They came out with results that were quite strong this morning. The chart's looking okay, but the market's just seeing a sell-off on the back of those results. If we look at FTSE 250, we see here that IG Group were the best performer, up a massive 7.8%. They've really spiked higher. And then on the downside, we've got Ferex Pro. They were down 3.3%. JD Sports featuring there as well, down 2.5%, though the chart's still looking pretty good. Ted Baker down 2.5%, down 2%, and the chart looking pretty dire in that case. Looking at the Europe top 50 now, we see here SocGen. They were the best performer, up 2.5% this morning. They're looking pretty good, looking like a recovery on the medium-term chart there. ING also up. We're seeing European banks featuring quite strongly here. Intesa, Banco Santander. Here we see the live pricing, BNP Paribas. Live prices coming in from Yahoo Finance there as I speak. And if we look at the downside, not many stocks on the downside. InBev, the brewer, they're down this morning. So we are just seeing a little bit of a deterioration there. But on the whole, the European market looking quite good this morning as well. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.